Hey everybody, it's Justin from Bittner Built, and this is my F2 Ultra. I've been having a lot of fun with this one since it came out earlier last month. And so today I had a project and I thought, you know what, let's do a how-to with this project. I'm going to take this large plate of brass. It is 3 millimeters. It is pretty much the maximum size that you can engrave on the F2 Ultra's bed. And we are going to do a large embossment and then cut it out on here, followed by recessing that cutout on this board that I will cut to size. Then we're going to stain it and inlay it pretty much like an award or a plaque would. So this is going to be a pretty thick, deep engraving, and we're going to need to use a 3D depth map. So I figured let's go through how to do a 3D depth map for this. I'll show you all my settings and we'll see how it turns out. Today on Bittner Built. So before we get started, it's important to think about our material. I ordered this brass plate, and when it came in the mail, it actually was not perfectly flat. When I put it down on something and I touched the corner, it rocked a little bit. And what that's going to do is it's really going to set everything off inside the laser, and we're not going to get a good accurate cut. Brass is a very soft metal, and so what I did last night was I took 2 pieces of plywood and I sandwiched it together, and then I took clamps, or you could even just use really, really heavy objects to press down on here, and I left it overnight, and when I came back in the morning, everything was flat as could be. So that is definitely step number 1, making sure that you're using materials that is going to lead to the best chance of success when you put something in here. And this was not a cheap piece of metal either, so I want to make sure that I don't screw up on it. Let's go over to the software and see how we're going to design the 3D depth map.
To start off, I need to have an image, and so I have a photo of my dog here. That's Luke Skybarker. But you know, both of these, while they do mostly capture him, they're not super great for what I would like for this application. So I put these photos into an AI image generator, and it came up with that. So a much cleaner, you know, cartoony version, but a clean version of my dog set into, you know, kind of a plaque. And so I think this is going to be a good image that I want to use for this engraving. I'm here at this website, Sculpt OK. There are a lot of different websites and programs that you can use to make a 3D depth map. I've done it in Photoshop. You can do it in XCS to a degree. But this one I found gives me a lot of really great results without any work. So you can, this isn't sponsored by them, you can sign up at Sculpt OK for a free account and try it out. You get like 100 credits. So I've uploaded my photo of my dog Luke. I'm now just going to hit draw, and it's going to give me 4 versions of a 3D depth map. And that's each one is going to be very different, but it's going to be very different specifically on its settings used to achieve it. They're all going to look the exact same. And that's why I actually like this website quite a bit. Okay, so it's generated my 4 images here. That took about 2 minutes. And so you can see that it's the exact same image, but it has applied the settings that it's using for depth a lot different. So this one here has a very pronounced mouth, but not a lot of intense detail, and everything seems very flat right behind it. You then go to more of a medium depth. You can see that it's kind of a light gray here. And so this is definitely one worth looking at. You know, you don't always have to go crazy with doing incredible depth when you're doing a project. So this one might be a good enough detail, shorter engraving time on this one because you're not going to go as deep in all of these areas. This one's probably the most aggressive as far as going almost to black. With the background on the coin here. So this one is going to be the longest engrave. It's also going to be the most pronounced out of all of them. And then this one over here seems to kind of be in between both of these, but also have a lot more detail in the eyes and the fur compared to this one over here. So the dog himself seems to have a little bit more depth in this scenario. So for me, I'll probably choose one of these two. I think I'm going to go with the extreme just because we want to have, you know, as cool of a project here as possible. You can go in and view it in 3D, and you can even continue to tweak it a little bit. But let's go ahead and download this, and we'll get started.
Before I go ahead and do this on our expensive plate that I only have one of, I have a junky coin here. So I'm running a test of my settings in the engraving just to make sure that everything comes out okay. All right, the coin is really hot, so I'm not touching it, but overall, our engraving is deep. It looks good. His face is a little flat right here, so I might go into the file and add in a little bit more details in here. I don't want to change it too much, but you know, overall, I just think a little bit there would look nice. It is dark because A, it is that junky coin that is not brass all the way through, and you need to take a buffer to this as well to kind of get all of that off. But it gives me enough confidence to go ahead and do it on the big plate.
So on our test image of Luke's coin, it was a little bit shiny, zero depth here on the very top layer. And so since black is low and white is high, that means that I have a little bit too much solid white here. So we're missing some details. So one quick and easy thing that I'm going to do before we start on the big project is I'm going to click my layer, and then I'm going to go select color range. So this is going to specifically select a color in here. So I could select gray, and you see how it updates over here, all the gray that's in there. I'm going to try and get the white that's most around his face. You can also tell like this is really white. There we go. So I think I got a good grab of all the white areas. Can obviously change the fuzziness in that, which selects more, but I want to try and keep it pretty tight. Hit OK. And so now it's selected all the areas with that specific color in it, which you can tell like the tip of the nose would be the tallest type of thing. So I'm going to go in here, and I don't want solid white. I want a little bit more of a gray hue. So I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. Hit OK. I'm going to use a paint bucket and just hit it once, and it will fill all of that in with a slightly darker shade. You can't even really tell that much. But what that's going to do is, rather than it being no engraving in those areas being pure white, it's now going to at least remove one layer there. And so that should give me a little bit more of these finer details of his fur in and around his face. So we're going to go ahead and export that. But before we do, there's another thing that we need to do, and that is to make our cut line that's going to go all the way around the outside. So an easy way to do that, I'm just going to select the negative area in here, make a new layer. I'm going to select the inverse, so it's specifically targeting around the circle. And I'm going to go to Edit and Stroke, and that's just going to make a line around the perimeter of this. I'm going to change it to a bright color. And let's do like a 5 here. Boom. There we go. So we have this separate, let's move it around here, this circle that's around here. And this is what I'm going to tell the machine to cut out. So I don't want to obviously cut into the little rim that I have here. I want to make sure that it's on the outside of everything. So now we can just take everything and put it into XCS and hit go. We're inside XCS with our picture of Luke here, and I've already positioned my brass. You want to try and always engrave as close to the middle as possible. Since this is a galvo laser, your laser beam is coming from the middle point and going out to the side, but you also want to preserve as much material as possible. So I am moving it a little bit up and to the left, but, you know, obviously way far away from the edges. You will see a little bit of a diagonal cut on this side as it's going through, and that's something that I'll probably end up, you know, maybe shaving down with a file. Now, I have my file. It is 4 inches. That's what I want it to be. I also have my insize. So this is going to be my cutout vector right here. As you can see over the side, I have it as insize. Here's all my settings. When I'm looking at Luke, I have it for emboss. Here's all my settings. And up at the top, we have it for embossment. And so we see that this is going to take 8 hours and 25 minutes. This is a very large engraving. Now, this exact same engraving on the exact same thickness of material was done in an hour and a half on a coin. So we are much bigger than that coin here. This is definitely going to be a very long engrave. I normally film my engravings on the machine with the lid up, and I use safety glasses, but since this is such a long engrave, I'm going to keep the lid down. I apologize, it's going to be a little bit tinted, but this is way too long of a time for me to have no one come into the garage while I'm working.
While the engraving's going on, let's get our workpiece ready. So I'm going to first create a nice profile around the outside of this wood. There are tons of different router bits with all sorts of different styles that'll make different designs on here. I'm going to use the most common, which is a roundover bit. Now, if you bring up a roundover bit just where it shows the curvature, it will just make a rounded edge on your wood. If you do it on both sides, you'll actually create a full round, and that's a bull nose. But if you bring your bit up a little bit higher, there is a straight blade before the curve. And so that will actually give us a little bit of a drop with a profile there, and that is called a DuPont. And I think that's going to look a little bit classier, what you might see on a plaque. So we're going to go ahead and do that first. After sanding, I use a tack cloth to wipe it all off, get all of the sawdust off of there. I'm just going to put a coat of shellac on here. We didn't really want any specific stain. Shellac is great because it only takes 20 minutes to dry, and then if I laser after it's on here, I can actually just wipe away any sort of char that happens because it's sitting on top of the shellac, so a wet cloth will wipe it off really easy. Well, we are 3.5 hours in on this engrave, and it just completely stopped. It's because I've been, every once in a while, like every half an hour, I've been pausing my job, lifting the lid so that I can get a good picture of it so that I could show you in greater detail while it's engraving. But on an 8.5 hour engrave, to screw up after 3.5 hours, I'm upset. The error that it gave me was that I moved the material piece, which I didn't. All I did was lift up the lid and close the lid again. So now it's making me start from scratch. So that really, really stinks. I'm going to rotate this. It's cool enough to touch, yeah. So I mean, we were doing really, really well. Don't open your lid, I guess. The engraving came out great, and so now I'm just doing a cleanup pass. Be sure to use crosshatch with this. It'll go in a couple different directions. That way you clean up any small artifacting left on top. He's not very shiny, so I'm going to take a rotary Dremel type of tool and use a wire brush on it, and you can see that it really brightens it up. It definitely needs some more. I'm going to keep at this for a little bit, but you can tell how polished he is now compared to the dull state he was in a moment ago. Our brass engraving is 3 millimeters thick, and so on this engraving pass on the wood, we're going to do 3 passes on the circle to get it down to about 1 millimeter in recess. That way I'm down a little bit, but not a ton. And then we're going to make sure that the letters are pretty black. We're then going to add another coat of shellac over top because obviously we have removed that wherever we are lasering right now. And then we'll finally glue on with some epoxy our brass emblem. So here's one last look at our original test coin. Notice the flat face on there. To our final version with a really detailed face. I really, really like how much fur we have in there. And of course, all of the writing that we have underneath is crisp, clear, and a pretty nice depth for this type of application. So we are all finished with our plaque. It came out really well and my wife likes it. That is the most important thing, of course. Now, when we look at the engraving size from a challenge coin to this large engraving, we are looking at about 8 times larger. To do this coin, it was an hour and a half, and to do this large one was 8.5 hours. So actually, we are doing better on time than if we had done 8 of these size challenge coins. I know 8.5 hours seems like a lot, but this is a pretty large cut and emboss on 3mm thick brass. So this now definitely has far more capability than my F1 Ultra, which was my favorite machine of last year. So now I can do the same types of things, but I can do them faster, deeper, and with more materials than I was able to do before. Also, we were able to really increase the detail on the face of my dog here. So when I first did this test engraving, he had a very flat face. Just by going in and doing that one little detail change, by adding in a little bit more contrast of the colors, I was able to get a lot more detail in his face for the final product. So I hope you were able to take away some good info on 3D depth maps. They're very easy to generate, and they're pretty easy to alter too. You can obviously even alter things by taking them completely out by just painting them black in a 3D depth map. So they're very useful for this type of process as well as other processes on other types of machines as well. So it is a good skill to learn how to generate those. If you're interested in any xTool products, I have an affiliate link down below. I get a little commission off of any of that. I always appreciate it. Hopefully I earned that click if that's something you're looking into. And if you got a lot of good content out of this video, I hope you will hit that subscribe button. That's what helps me grow my channel so that I can just put out more good content for you. Hope you'll stay safe in the shop, and I'll see you in the next one.